Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, the here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today, it's a very special episode because this is a rare podcast where we're talking about a video game because we liked it and played it without anyone asking us to. And we had a critical mass of people on the show who wanted to talk about it. So today we are discussing Balatro, the roguelike deck builder that took the internet by storm because it uses poker hands. And joining me, as always, to discuss all things video games. Wait, no. This crew is not always who I talk with. I'm joined by Chris ZombiePie Redacted. Hello.
Hey, to break it to you, Gino, I am actually playing Balatro while you record this podcast, and there's nothing you can do to stop me.
That's very meta of you. But also probably bad for your overall level of attention, which sometimes leaves things to be desired when you're paying attention.
I found a weird glitch in Final Fantasy IV that I want to talk about. So sometimes when you have non-paladin... Oh, wait, that's a spoiler. I guess we'll get to that different section. Hey, Jeff, what did you think of Final Fantasy IV? Which version are you playing?
Oh, well, me and
With
my
your
wife. My wife,
Seattle.
it's a real piece.
That other voice you heard is Braden, ArbitraryWater Redacted. The other redacted brother.
The animal fun fact for today is birds aren't real. There's a paper that
I
says
knew
that
it.
they aren't real.
Well, welcome to the show. Thank you for that amazing fun fact. And
You're
today
welcome.
we've got two Balatro experts. I'll let you decide, listener, who the two Balatro experts are. But before we discuss Balatro, our normal housekeeping, you can get into touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. That is our email address. You can support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. If you were to do so for $3 or more, you can put a game on the slush pile for Off the Deep End. If we get a few more patrons, we will be forced to play Mass Effect Andromeda once we hit the 40 patron mark. Both Off the Deep End and the regular Deep Listens crew will be playing that game, which I am told is not good. So that'll be fun, I guess, for everyone involved. And you would also get access to our Discord. We're not going to do a Discord report today because Emma's not here, but, on the main show.
Discord report. Boop-a-doop-doop.
Discord report.
I'm just checking the Discord.
What did I say
and
in the Discord that pissed people
I
off?
see people
right.
are talking about their
Making fun of
favorite
Borgmaster?
Borgmaster take.
Yeah. So
Look,
everybody, real quick, we'll
wait,
go down
wait.
the list. Okay, Braden, what is your Borgmaster take?
Wait, stop. You need to do your bits one at a time. When you do your bits at the same time, no one can hear your bits. What was that, ZP?
So on the Discord, we seem to be making fun of Borgmaster at, purely at his expense for having these
Our
stuck in the
our
sand
friend and
takes.
occasional rotating
co-hosts.
chair.
So everyone's now shared their Borgmaster-esque takes about video games and gameology. Braden, what is your Borgmaster take?
My Borgmaster take is that the original BioShock is important and popular not because it's any good, but because it tricked console FPS players into playing a video game with a story.
Okay, Gino, what is your Borgmaster take?
Driving games all suck. All of them. I don't care how cars handle. I don't want to drive cars. I don't care to race cars. Car people confuse me in real life. Digital car people confuse me as much or more.
That's very un-American and un-Italian of you.
Look, it's my least American and least Italian take is I don't like cars.
Anyways, I have never been a fan of Metroidvanias. I think that they continue to get a gimme with an overall what I consider design flaw in that they've convinced a generation that backtracking is good and fun. Also, I said this before and I'll say it again, true ZP take. Alloy in the Forbidden Dawn Horizons games is like the Anne Hathaway of video games.
What
Just
does that
a
mean?
venerable void of, okay, you've kind of got a personality, but
I mean, I just don't like those games.
Anne Hathaway as a person. This
Anne
is Anne
Hathaway
Hathaway
has done
slander.
work. Excuse me. She has a fucking Oscar. I mean, a hecking Oscar.
wait, no. The main podcast swears again, Braden.
We're swear again.
What?
Yeah.
Wait.
We started.
I've been
swearing.
editing out the fuck words for nothing.
for nothing.
Yeah.
Jesus
I've
Fucking
been meaning.
Christ.
I was on the main podcast and like within 5 minutes, M drops the F bomb. It's like, oh, maybe we should actually listen to the main podcast.
I found out that the radio doesn't care.
So we need you, dear listeners, to give us the moolah to do weird stuff. Braden
We're also
and I
gonna
are
do the
thinking
anime podcast.
we're going to do
Yeah.
an anime podcast.
How
This is only
much?
something
How much longer
possible.
before? How far into Fate Stay Night?
Well,
are y'all?
I thank you for asking, Gino. It turns out that Dean Stay Night is not as readily or easily accessible as we originally anticipated. But we're
It's
going to
been
work
pulled
through
off
this.
of Crunchyroll.
We're
Oh,
going to
no.
work through this problem by
Okay.
finding it out there.
Oh,
I
you're
think
gonna.
it might be on High Dive still.
Mm.
Okay. Well, let me know. We'll let people know. We will alert them. We will play the
Otherwise,
Fate Stay Night
get
siren.
it where you get it.
Yeah, we'll alert the listeners on the main show when we have a target date for As to Unnamed Anime Podcast. That will be a Patreon exclusive. All right. So without further ado, let's talk some Balatro. First, as we always do, let's explain what the heck this game is for people who might not have played it. Braden, what's a Balatro?
All right. Poker. It is a popular game for gambling.
Yeah. Mm.
It uses the deck of 52 face cards that I remember some people in my church being told that it was sinful to play with them. But you see, poker, you need to make specific kinds of hands, and then you get more. Some hands beat other hands based on the suit of the card and how many cards. And then Balatro says, "What if you did that, but also you made it silly?"
Yes.
A deck builder. So Gino's activated.
Yep, it activated me. So you are creating poker hands. You're drawing 7 cards. Usually it's, I think, 9 cards to start. Usually it's 9 card hands. And then you're trying to present your best 5-card poker hand out of the 9 cards you're dealt. You get to select which cards you play. Depending on what kind of hand you get, there are multipliers. Basically, it will take the value of the cards, like the face value, like 9 gives you 9 chips, 8 gives you 8 chips, 7 gives you 7 chips, etc., etc. Face cards give you 10, aces give you 11 chips by default, and then depending on what your hand was, there is a certain amount of chips you get for the hand, and then there's a multiplier associated with the hand. So, for example, if you play 3 of a kind, you would get the value of the 3 of a kind that you played. So if you play, let's say, 3 threes, that would get you 9 chips for the 3 threes. Then I believe 3 of a kind is 30 chips just for playing a 3 of a kind of any kind. And then a times 3 multiplier. So if we do that math, 9, so you get 39 for all of that. Then times 3 would get you to 107 chips, if my math is right. Or 117. It might be 117.
Too much talk, play
I think
cards.
it's 117. So you're building hands, and you're getting better rewards for the better hands you get. And then on top of that, There are joker cards that you can get, which change your multipliers, or they change the way that your hands can be constructed in some way. They just kind of modify. If you've played a roguelike deck builder, they're like the artifacts that are in many of them, like Slay the Spire likes. They just modify how the game works. There are planet cards. ZP, what do planet cards do?
They modify the overall base stats to the types of hands that you can serve, plus a handful that are only accessible in Balatro because you can modify the number and types of cards that are in your deck. So it's your usual Yahtzee rules of a single high card, pair, double pairs, straight, full house, and then, 4 of a kind, 3 of a kind. Your usual poker hands plus a little extra secret hands.
Yeah, so the planet cards make those hands stronger regardless of what you're playing. So if you make your 2 pairs just have a higher baseline output whenever you make a 2 pair, or whatever hand the planet aligns with. There are also tarot cards. Braden, what are tarot cards?
So tarot cards will usually modify a selection of cards you have in different ways. So, for example, there's a card that will increase the rank of whatever card you're using, so it will go up 1. So if you want to, or there's one that will duplicate a card. You can put modifiers on cards to make them more valuable when they are played, like the glass card, which increases the multiplier, but has a 1 in 4 chance of breaking after use. You can make your card into just a slab of rock, which does not add anything to any hands or suits, but it's worth a bunch of chips. So if you're going for a 2-pair build, that's a pretty good way of doing that.
Yeah, so tarot cards, they sometimes give you money, sometimes they give you jokers, sometimes they manipulate the cards in your deck. They tend to be pretty wild cardy. Like they change fundamental elements of your deck. And then, as you said, Braden, there are modifiers of the cards themselves. So you can make it so cards are lucky, which sometimes causes them to give you bonuses. You can make it so cards are steal. So if you hold them in your hand, they give you multipliers. There's gold, where gold cards, if they stay in your hand, they pay you money. And your goal here every round is to get over a certain number of chips earned before you run out of hands. So by default, you have 4 hands to start with. If you clear whatever the goal is within 4 hands, it'll pay you $1 for every hand that's left over, and you'll usually get some sort of payout for beating the blind, which is what each of the rounds is called a blind. So there's a small blind, a big blind, and then a boss blind, which will have unique rules. So you're earning money for each blind you overcome. You can also skip blinds, which will give you one-time payouts. Like, ZP, what are some of the examples, like, for skipping? What sort of stuff can you get if you just choose not to do it?
Skipping sometimes gives you what are these are the tags. So sometimes you can get a free uncommon joker. Sometimes you can get a rare joker. Sometimes you can give yourself certain investments down the road that only trigger after you defeat the boss for that rank, such my personal favorite being the investment tag, which gives you 25 Gs. There are other ones that just upgrade a poker hand by 3 levels, or give you like multiple spectral cards or arcana cards or tarot cards.
Oh yeah, we didn't even say spectrals. What are spectral cards, Braden?
Spectral cards really mess things up.
Yeah, they will do some crazy stuff. Like one of them is every single card in this random assortment, random hand drawn from your deck is turned into one random card of the same type.
Yeah, or all of them are turned to one suit. Or here you get a random rare joker, but it takes all your money. Or turn one joker foil or polychrome, which those foil treatments. If you're familiar with trading card games, if they're foil, they're worth more. So there's different types of foiling you can get on your cards, and those foils will give you better multipliers or chip bonuses, et cetera, et cetera. So there's spectral cards that foil something out and then blow up all your other jokers. It foils one and then blows up everything else. So those are kind of the big splashy effects for sure.
Also similar to, trading card games, you can buy cards individually or you can bind them in blind packs. Every type of card or every type of special additive to your deck can be purchased in packs of 2 for $5 or 1 for $3 or 1 for $4. 1 for $5, sorry.
Yeah, the 1 out of 5, you pick 1 card out of 5, or you can pick 2 cards out of 4. It depends on what type of pack you're buying. But Joker cards can come in packs, regular cards, Tyros, Spectral, Planets, any of the modifier, really any of the cards in this game can come in a pack. And so your goal is just to assemble the best deck you possibly can so that you're repeatedly overcoming the blinds. And then the boss blinds are kind of your gate checks, right? If you lose at any point in the small blind, medium blind, or boss blind, your run is over. But the boss blinds will generally be the most challenging because they might have unique rule modifiers. What was your least favorite boss blind, ZP?
Probably the one that forces you to only do one hand. Then, depending on which type of deck you're using, sometimes, for example, there's the one that only has 2 types of suits. If you have the one that disables one of those suits, you're just out of luck. I wasn't a huge fan of the one that always just... there's a way to work around it, but the one where your first hand is just everything's face down. It's like, well, I guess I'm going to just burn a bunch of discards until this is over, but I can work around that. Generally speaking, like the ones that are actually the hardest are the most boring. The ones that just put this sometimes insurmountable blind that feels unbeatable unless you've done everything optimally.
Yeah,
like,
the ones that are just
the
like
Flint, for example, the one that just halves all of your chip values, that sucks. And then the one that actively degrades your hand types, which is, I just invested all of this money into these different hands. This is raw.
See,
the
trick is,
I think the one that devalues all of the cards you used previously can be a real motherfucker, as they say.
the wall,
if you don't work around it,
for sure. Yeah, I think the easiest boss blind is probably the one that just starts with your opening hand face down. That's probably the least consequential because your discards, you start with like 3 discards, so you can discard up to 5 cards per discard, and you can clear that whole boss blind in 2 discards if you want to. And you can also sort your hand by suit or by rank, and doing that sorting can actually kind of give you some insight into what the cards are. So like if you sort by suit, you might be able to luck your way into a flush, or you might be able to figure out what the cards are just by reorganizing. So there are ways to get around face down cards. So what was your, as you play through, you will eventually, if you win runs, you will unlock other decks. What was your favorite deck to use? And say it's gimmick, please, Braden.
I like the one that makes it so that there are no face cards.
The abandoned deck.
The abandoned deck.
That's a good one.
Because face cards are unsurprisingly the most valuable in terms of the amount of chips they're worth. But if you have fewer cards in your deck, if you have, let's say, 40 cards instead of 52, that means that it is a lot easier to actually meaningfully build your deck by adding or removing cards. And that's what I like to do. I think that's fun. I like to actually be able to tweak my deck in a meaningful way. It's not the most powerful of them.
No, not at all.
No.
I think it's one of the more powerful to me, just because the abandoned deck, it skews towards straights. Like, you can get straights and straight flushes with that deck better than most other deck types, simply because there's no face cards to mess it up. There are just fewer overall card combos, which leaves you with a much more consistency. Because I find straights to be a lot harder in this game, and just in general, than flushes to engineer.
I mean, that's always been a big piece of debate within poker and card-based games is why are straights ranked lower than flushes and full houses when they're actually sometimes harder depending on the deck, harder to create. But that is a debate for the ages, let's say.
CP, what was your go-to deck? What was your favorite?
Man, I went busted the minute I got it. I went plasma, bitch.
Oh, what does the plasma deck do?
It balanced your chips and multiplier when calculated score is done for a hand. So basically, let's say you have a lot of blue chips or those values, it just cuts that in half and distributes things evenly, which leads to some real messed up total scores. The problem with that deck is that the base blind size is 2 times greater because, again, this deck is busted without that limitation, but it's still busted. And then for me personally, I actually ended up, for personal purposes, like the checkered deck was also something I started using a lot more, in part because I really needed to get to that those higher level stakes to unlock more decks, and that one helped me out in that regard.
Yeah, so that is the checkered deck was my go-to, and its deal is you start with 26 spades and 26 hearts. So it gets rid of diamonds and clubs from your deck entirely, which means that half your deck is a flush of one way, the other half is the flush the other direction.
Out of curiosity, did you get all of the decks in the game?
I did, yes.
I'm down to the last deck. I cannot get to the orange stake in anything that I have, so I don't actually have all of the decks. I'm on my last one.
I use the checkered.
Get that last deck.
I use the checkered to unlock it.
Yeah, but I actually see like what my reaction to that is like the idea that I have to now pick a different deck and then get all the way to orange to now unlock my last deck. That's just shitty.
You don't have to. Like, you can get good enough with any specific deck to do that.
Yeah, some of these decks are harder than others. Like, I dare anyone to get to that point with red or blue or like black. Black is just a bad
Black is
time.
hard mode.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely each of these decks, like the I would say the starter deck, so red deck gives you extra discards, blue deck gives you an extra hand, yellow deck, you start with extra money, green, you don't earn interest, but you get more money per hands and discards, and then black is you get extra joker slots, but fewer hands every round. I like that they start you out with these decks that kind of manipulate the base rules, and then once you get beyond the black deck, it's a lot more like, hey, now the card, like,
now these cards are fixtures. Now there's some real messed up things that they do to make things difficult. I just feel like, I mean, I get that it's the rogue element of this game, but I just feel like unlocking those decks, like these are the biggest immediate differentiators with how you play the game. I think that the stakes and that barrier is a little higher than it needs to be.
Sure. But if you unlock the checkered deck, I would say that is probably, in my experience, that's the strongest deck, just because if you ever get your hand size up to 10, you are guaranteed a flush every single round. You know, there are ways to mathematically just be guaranteed really strong hands with the checkered deck.
Yeah, as long as you don't get one of the blinds that makes half of those cards useless.
Yeah, then there's the blinds that eliminate half of those cards, and then
But then the other half of your deck is still flushes.
Or what if you get the one where you can only play a flush once, and then you have to think about playing other cards?
That's the one that screws you for sure. So speaking of stuff that really mucks up a run, or really helps a run, jokers. Which jokers did y'all lean on? What did you find to be the most effective? Like, if you went in with a plan, what was your move? What were you looking for?
enough, like one of the more straightforward cards ends up being the best, like the copy ability. If you're able to copy even one of your abilities, and it's one of those abilities that adds chips or multipliers, like that one's busted.
Yeah, the copy Joker is quite good. Whatever it's like almost any of these Jokers, if you have them twice, get really messed up, and that just guarantees that happened. Braden, what was your favorite Joker?
I like the weird esoteric Jokers that require very specific hand types to use. They're not the most effective, but when there's the walkie-talkie that makes every single 10 and every single 4 count twice.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that one.
So you can get into very silly niche situations where you have a bunch of 10s and 4s via, using tarot cards and stuff. And suddenly this cheapo gimmick Joker is very good.
There's also the hiker, which there are a lot of cards where they're multiplicatively. The longer you have them, if you can get them at the start of the game, they become essential to changing your playthrough. But the hiker that adds just 4 chips to any scored card, if, for example, like the checkered deck, where you're going to probably play the same hands that use the complete set of cards to get there, you're probably going to be using the same cards over and over again, and then you just have these cards that have stacked stats for the rest of the game.
I mean, the hiker for me might be the biggest trap Joker of all the Jokers, just because it's raising chips, but not that many chips every single time.
Well, again, like I say, I primarily play Plasma, so anything that increases the stakes to those stats.
Plus 4 chips is the same as plus 4 multiplier.
Yeah.
With that deck. But when I'm playing just normal builds, because you are trying to win with as few hands as possible, because every hand you save is $1, the hiker really benefits from playing lots of hands so that its effect can stack on your cards over and over and over again. But the game also greatly incentivizes you to win in one hand per blind if you can. So I find that.
Well, I mean, if you pair that card with, let's say, like a green Joker, which is already going to incentivize you to play and avoid discards, you can actually. There are weird synergies to the cards in the game. Mm-hmm. And those can be very important. There are sometimes cards that only make sense when they are paired up with a specific card, which I would say is actually one of the more annoying things about this game.
Yeah, the run's vary pretty heavily. My favorite go-to common Joker was Riff Raff, which just created 2 random common Jokers in your hand every blind. So what I would do is just go in with Riff Raff and then sell the 2 extra common Jokers if they weren't good. If they were good, I'd leave them. And then that would just give me a constant stream of money that I could then turn into better Jokers. And then once I finally got 5 good Jokers, I'd sell the Riff Raff. Which I thought was pretty good. There's some good like common Jokers for selling. And it would randomly generate them for you.
I would say, like, if we're gonna like transition into like Jokers that I thought were underpowered, I actually thought that a lot of those legendary Jokers were incredibly underpowered, but at least the good news is you can sell them for a boatload of cash. And then the cards that you unlock by increasing the number of a base suit type in your deck, whether it's other than the Bloodstone actually, but those ones can be hit or miss because they're all very, very different.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the legendary ones, some of them are just like fundamentally game breaking, and some of them are, like they don't necessarily do that much. And they're a pain to unlock too. But they rarely show up. So I think they are suitably interesting, if nothing else. You know what was your biggest trap Joker, Braden? What Joker did you get and every time it failed?
The bus stop.
What does the bus stop do?
The bus stop gives a stacking multiplier every single time you play a card, play a hand without a face card, and 90% of the time, I would get that Joker when I was focusing on face cards.
Yeah, for me, the biggest traps were the bull and the bootstraps. Both of them one of them gives you chips for every $1 you have. One of them gives you multipliers for every dollar you have. And my problem with them is the chip bonuses and the multiplier bonuses are not big enough to be worth not spending money. Even if you have like a steady stream of money, it is probably better for you to sell that Joker and then spend a bunch of money until you have a better Joker instead of just sitting there hoarding money.
I think the ones for me were always the ones that would change their descriptors or to get their benefit with each hand, whether it was the to-do list or probably the castle, where to get its buffs, you have to it's going to be a different type of card or a different type of hand you need to explore or get. And it's like, I can't prepare my deck for everything, so this card only being usable for me 40 to 50% of the time, no thank you. And anything that's improving your situation in the store, I just felt like was a trap, having rerolls be $0 or, having things in the deck where if I open a booster pack, there's a 50% chance that a tarot card will pop up. Those types of cards I thought were just meh.
Yeah, winning blinds fast and saving up money that way usually just does more than whatever that little bonus was going to do. Another trap, the Seance card.
Yeah, that card's terrible.
If your poker hand is a straight flush, it creates a random spectral card. Some of the spectral cards, they're really swingy and powerful, but some of them just are not good. When they're really narrow, I should say.
The ones that are good are incredibly good, but the ones that suck are terrible.
Yeah, some of them are do this one-time thing where all of your cards turn into one suit, but make it so your hand size is -1 permanently. It's that you're wrong. That one I actually think is worth the payoff because that's the easiest way to get a 5 of a kind. And then you've unlocked maybe one of the more doable secret hands, which just opens up an entire different way that you're going to play for the rest of that run. I think the ones that always suck were the ones where it's I'm going to apply this buff to this card, but guess what? All your Joker cards are gone. Or I'm going to do this buff, and I'm going to give you a boatload of money, and then I'm going to burn all of these cards. It's well, half these cards are good, so I guess I'm just going to skip. So that's the one thing I will say is if something doesn't suit your needs, you can just skip it. They're That's
not
true, and you can sell.
to take it.
You can also sell stuff.
Yeah.
Man, maybe the best of all of the Jokers, I feel like the Cavendish is... Why is it so good?
But it's got the downside of it can just die.
Well, it's a 1 in 1,000 chance of dying, but it's a ×3 multiplier.
I've had the Cavendish. Oh, well, I'm thinking of the Gross Michelle, which has a higher. But yeah, it's kind of hard to Well, yeah, it's good. Okay.
You need the Gross Michelle to destroy itself, and then you get the Cavendish. But yeah, it's a common, and it's a ×3 multiplier, and the chances of it destroying itself are really low. Yeah, so how long did you play Balatro? Are you still playing it?
I'm still playing it right now, Gino.
Okay, excellent. I put about 44 hours in.
I put about 20 hours in.
What is no comment? I think I crossed the 100-hour mark.
Oh, damn.
And like I said, I still haven't gotten the last card. So I play this game fundamentally differently than Gino, which I don't care about actually playing it efficiently. I want everything. So right now, I'm the kind of person who, when I was into Magic the Gathering, I didn't actually care about learning how to play it. I just wanted all of the cards for a complete set. So I'm at, like I said, one deck remaining. I've got most of the vouchers. I've got every single tarot card. I still need to get the 5 flush, the final type of card at the end. I probably, if I could do that, I've gotten every single spectral card, blind, tag, booster pack, additions. So yeah, I don't care if it's not the most efficient way to play it, but when something says you haven't discovered this, it's like, I'm gonna buy it. I don't care. I gotta increase my thing.
Yeah, I am ruthless. I am just trying to win the rounds. I'm usually playing this as like a 15-minute, 20-minute, half-hour like time sink.
Then maybe we need to do another thing where you coach me into actually getting all of this shit, because like I said, I don't play this efficiently. For me, it's the collectathon. Collectathon for me.
I can definitely give you some tips to make your runs. Even if you were just being collectathonish, I can give you some pocket strategies that'll probably work. So you're doing both. You can do both. I think this game is flexible enough that you can achieve both, which is I think it speaks highly of how this game is designed, that you can take both approaches.
I've had kind of like an underarching theory about this game, to where I like this game. Don't get me wrong. I truly do like this game. I think it's a banger of a game. But this game does get on my goddamn nerves sometimes.
Why?
And part of it is the fact that, so there's been a debate among the Balatro people where they have been debating whether or not every hand with efficient play is actually doable. Whether that part of, and I think that the overarching, like,
you mean like every run is winnable?
Every run is winnable.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that there's pretty much really good evidence that no, it's not. And what this starts to get us into is let's say, an unspoken concept in gaming, and especially card games, known as the free cell theory, which is someone way back in the 80s and 90s took an algorithm and wanted to calculate how many of the hands that Microsoft Free Cell has are actually winnable. And they found out it was about 70 to 75%. And that's kind of what Balatro follows by, is it definitely feels like with efficient play, your odds of winning, stakes aside, is above 50%, but there's enough of these hands to where it feels like there's no chance, to where it has that roguelike tendency. And then once you increase the stakes, the percentages go down. But the promise of efficient play getting you through, similar to free cell, kind of keeps you going regardless of how low the odds might start to get.
Sure. Braden, what is your tolerance for luck-based gameplay like this? Like, do you usually participate in this sort of thing?
Well, Gino, I love luck-based gameplay. I like deck builds. I think one of the reasons why this is such a this game was such a big success as a deck builder has a lot to do with, it is very simple, it is straightforward, but it has a lot of variation to it. It's easy to parse visually.
Yes, for sure. And I think
in a way that Slay the Spire can be, a little more difficult.
I think so. In terms of first, like, the luck-based gameplay part, as someone who came up playing Magic the Gathering since I was really young, you kind of consent to, okay, some of these hands are unwinnable. Like, you're just going to lose sometimes. And this game, I know that there are some runs that are actual, like, if they're not actually impossible, for me they are impossible. Like, maybe they're not impossible with perfect knowledge, but you don't have perfect knowledge, right? Like, sometimes there might have been an option where you could have, like, re-rolled the shop and you would have gotten a better Joker. But, you don't always know that. There's some hidden information. Maybe inside of a pack there was a card that you could have really used, but if you bought a different pack instead, you just never get to know about the card that would have really helped you out. So I think that's I just kind of consent to, okay, you're going to get screwed by the randomness occasionally. And with this game, I would say the randomness probably gets me, 1 out of every 2-3 runs. And that's fine. Like, that happens. I am okay with it. If you are not okay with that sort of thing, this game might frustrate you for sure. But I think, ZP, you've played this much. You've played like 100 hours, so it's clearly not enough to like completely dissuade you. It's just something that's
to go back to the it's something that you notice. To go back to the argument of like the free cell theory is you have to have a success rate with just average play, generally speaking, what they found before a majority of people will give up. 40% is the magic number, supposedly. In fact, it's kind of something that the board game industry has embraced by a lot, which is you want to aim for, like, if something is going to be hard, collaborative, and the stakes are deliberately placed against the player, you need it. The lowest you can go is slightly below 50% before most people, other than weirdos that like things like King of Dragon Pass, where the percentage is like 10%, you got to be only slightly below 50. And I think that this game does that.
I agree.
On the flip side, the swings are pretty wild in this game. And on top of that, it feels like the deck creation part of this game is, well, it has common vocabulary, as Braden talked about, but I think that the actual deck creation norms in this game are a little, it's surface level. It's stuff for newcomers, and that's fine.
I think a lot of this game's limitations simply have to do with it needing to be based around the standard deck of 52.
Yeah, going completely nutso crazy with changing what kind of pairs or flushes or like 5 of a kind. Like, some of the more interesting deck configurations that you can get into just are not readily achievable with some of the default decks with the resources that you're going to get. And that can be a little limiting, right? Like, there are some hands that you can create in this game that are impossible with a normal deck of cards, like 5 of a kind, like you said, ZP. But because this game doesn't necessarily start you with the ability to create 5 of a kind without spectral cards or other manipulations getting involved, you sometimes can't see that cool feature of the game. And I think, like you said, Braden, it comes from the fact that they are trying to stick as close to poker rules as they can and normal deck construction. So have I ever told either of you about the concept of piggybacking when it comes to card games or game design?
Go on.
Okay, this is a term that
ride?
No, that's not it. It's not piggyback rides. Believe it or not. So this is a concept that came from, or I learned about from Mark Rosewater of Magic the Gathering fame. He's, I think, still the lead designer of Magic the Gathering. And this concept is that when you're designing a game, if you can piggyback on some sort of common knowledge, that generally benefits your overall game design because you do not need to explain as much to the player, right? So if you have... in Magic the Gathering, it would be like, if you made a card that was a bird, right? And then the bird flies. Everyone's like, oh, okay, flying, something that flies goes over something that can't fly. Okay, right, something that can't fly can't block something that can fly. Got it, right? So that is a very common mechanic in Magic the Gathering. Flying piggybacks on our knowledge of the physical world. Right? You don't need to explain that much. Once you explain flying, just the word flying does almost all the work for you. Balatro piggybacks on poker. It just you can get 90% of the way to playing Balatro just by knowing how the hell poker hands work. And because a lot of people have been exposed to poker, they at least have the basics of, okay, this is how I can build a hand. These are what the good hands are. You already know what the good hands are, right? You don't have to explain two of a kind is not as good as a flush, because everyone knows that because they've played poker, if they've played poker. And so you just get people to competent so much faster than like Slay the Spire would, because Slay the Spire, you need to understand RPG combat more than anything else, right? Or, you know, maybe Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, just more niche things than poker. And I think that did a lot of work to making this game more approachable and wider reaching. Because Braden, like you said earlier, this game's kind of a hit, kind of a huge hit, like maybe the biggest hit since Slay the Spire in this genre.
I think this game, people who I would have never expected to play a sicko game involving the building of decks via cards have put significantly more time into this than I did.
Yeah.
This is going to be one of the... I believe this is going to be one of the most talked about games of this year.
I agree. And it's, I think, almost entirely because for all of the mechanics we talked about earlier and like ways to build your decks and all these different mechanics that are going on, the fundamental gameplay is play a poker hand. And because of that, everyone who has played poker is at least okay at this game. You know, you will probably be able to win a run if all you know is how poker works and you occasionally buy a good joker. You'll probably win a run or two. And that just ease of pickup and play is so powerful in game design. And it's, I think, just something that this game, it knocked out of the park. On top of that, the aesthetics, ZP, how do you feel about the song and the look of this game?
The song is an addictive earworm, and while it doesn't have a lot of animations, the few animations that are here get the job done, if not are some of the most effective that you could do. And the symbology of the cards is actually way more intricate and informative than you would think.
I agree.
I would say slight quibble with some of the different polychrome effects. I think that those can sometimes be a little hard on the eyes, but at least it has the ability to like change things using the sliders and the options.
Yeah, and I will say also, like, it's kind of pixelated because this game is trying to look like video poker, right? It's trying to look like video poker that you would sit down and play at like a Vegas casino in the 80s or 90s. It's got a CRT effect, filter kind of going over the screen. Everything's deliberately pixelated. It looks and it sounds illicit, or like, you know, it sounds like, I don't know. I imagine a casino. It's like a little drone to it. It feels like there should be cigarette smoke coming out of the screen when you're playing this game. And I think that leans into the overall aesthetic of this whole thing. I think it's what makes it work so well in some ways. And man, when you actually knock a blind out of the park with one hand and you get the like rapidly accelerating chip count and the corner of the screen goes on fire.
Flame effect.
Game juice. Game juice is strong with this game. For sure.
This game's audiovisual presentation is very good at giving you the flashing lights and colors that your brain likes.
And it's literally based on a gambling game. So
yeah.
Your brain is already like, oh man, big money, no whammies. Oh, look at the fire. Everything's going up, and then, you know, cash out, and then there's slot machine sounds, which so many brains are already primed for slot machine sounds to be very good. And this game just leans into it. It has a lot to thank Vegas for, let's say. Like Las Vegas, I think, did a lot of work here to make this game a hit. All right. So, any closing thoughts on Balatro? Is there anything we haven't talked about that you wanna cover?
It's gonna be weird because I think that a lot of people have presented it as a Game of the Year candidate, which I think it's definitely in the considerations. This is the least, I would say, orthodox Game of the Year candidate or viral video game I've seen. Like the circles and the people who are just purely in love with it, like this is the one. This is the one that got it done. We sometimes talk about like the genre breakers, but this is the card game, Gino, that got people to actually find card games palatable for themselves. It wasn't Magic the Gathering by hook or by crook.
Oh, for sure.
It's Balatro.
Yeah, this is a
so
card
it's going to be
game.
weird to see how this translates. I wonder, I guess I'll pick your brain, Gino. Do you think that this will have trickle-down effects for the rest of the genre? Do you think that there will be more cardery done? Do you think that older card games or traditional collectible card games will benefit by the ubiquity of Balatro at this point?
I don't think collectible card games will. I think that other roguelike deck builders will try similar things. But I think it's worth saying there's very little of the design of Balatro that is actually unique in this genre, right? Like the idea, the unique part was picking poker as the format for dealing damage, quote unquote, right? Like a lot of these sorts of card games are deal X amount of damage in X amount of time so that you don't die. This one just happened to pick playing poker instead of attacking, right? That's a novel thing. Maybe someone will make a different card game. Like maybe there'll be a Go Fish version of this or something, right? You could do this again with other card games that are also popular. But I don't think there's a lot else about this design. Like you're upgrading cards, that's very common. You've got an artifact equivalent with the Jokers. That's ubiquitous. It's round based, and you are like there's no multiple routes like in Slay the Spire or some of the other games in the genre, but there are, changing blinds. There are risk reward options that are pretty similar. So I think the lesson here is there's a lot of opportunity to not necessarily just do Slay the Spire gameplay. You don't have to take Slay the Spire's combat mechanic as central as people have. I think people have taken RPG mechanics as kind of the basic way of communicating the card-based combat. There are other ways to do it. And I think like Solitaire might be an option. Maybe you could design a roguelike deck builder around that, But other than those things, I don't know what else Balatro has. Like the look and feel, I think, are perfect for Balatro, but I don't think that they would work for other games. So I think that there is a path here, but this game is more derivative than a lot of other games that get this popular. Do you think that's fair, Braden?
Yeah. I also think this game launching on Switch was a big plus.
And then getting pulled on Switch
in Australia. Oi, mate, no gambling here.
But yeah, I say all of this as someone who played 14 of these styles of games simultaneously for the community endurance run this year.
You are the hard case on one end.
Yes, I am an outlier. Like most other people wouldn't necessarily notice how many of these mechanics are similar to mechanics from other games. But that's fine. Like you don't go to game design jail for taking good ideas from another game, right? That's totally okay. I think that the unique thing that this game did in terms of weaponizing people's knowledge of an existing card game that is not licensed, great. That is A+ design. Like lift that stuff where you can. And I think that that's done a lot of work. And maybe it'll get people to try other games. But I don't know that you're going to go from Balatro and then go into, I don't know, Across the Obelisk. I would not recommend doing that. I don't think you'll enjoy it. But maybe you can go from Balatro to Slay the Spire. Because Slay the Spire is just simpler. It's not as big of a time suck. Also, I think one of the big innovations, or it's not even an innovation, I think that one of the good decisions for Balatro is that one run of Balatro is like a half hour. I think that is like the time that you want for run-based games. You want it to be like a half hour to an hour. These games don't go long, and that's perfect. I think the games that decide our run-based game is going to be 2 to 3 hours, you've made a mistake. Sorry. I'm out on that.
I agree with this.
I think that is just, it turns out your game is probably not interesting enough to hold that, especially if it's run-based, because the longer the run is, the bigger the feel bad you will get when you lose because luck went bad. And these games, luck is inherent. Improvising around bad luck is, in some ways, the biggest challenge of these games. And so the harder the punish is when luck goes sour, the more people you're just going to lose. So I think you want that turnaround time to be fast. Have either of you played Luck Be a Landlord?
Yes.
Why
machines.
Played it.
Why do you think Luck Be a Landlord did not have the breakout that Balatro did?
It's too simple.
Because hating on capitalism hadn't become normalized by the time it came out.
So Luck Be a Landlord, for those who don't know, it's a slot. You're basically building a slot machine. So it's like got empty slots on the reels, and then the different symbols you put on the reels will interact in different ways. So it's ultimately a deck builder, but it's the gameplay is slot machines instead of playing cards. Because I think that this game and Luck Be a Landlord are probably the two most similar in some ways, in terms of piggybacking on existing knowledge. But yeah, it's just too simple. Ultimately was its problem.
Yes. I think it. I think it doesn't have quite as much going on, and also presentation-wise, it's also a little too simple.
Yeah, that is my hypothesis, is that game just doesn't look. Your gameplay can be great if you look a little bit basic. There are some people who just are not going to get on board. Like there's almost like a theme park ride. You must be this tall to ride the ride, and you must have at least this much slickness of presentation to get a critical mass of audience. If you're not going to be like a shitty meme game, All right. Any other?
Want to play some shitty meme games? Braden and I have got some suggestions. We've been watching VTubers play shitty meme games for a while.
No, thank you.
There's this one right now, Gino, that's super popular where if you speak too loud while playing the game, you lose.
Yeah, and the game jump scares you over and over again.
It jump scares you, so if you scream, you die.
Cool. No, thank you.
It's very popular with the youth.
I bet.
And when you try to play it yourself, it kind of sucks ass.
I bet. Love these games that are just performant. They are only to be streamed. They are not to be played. Well, any other closing thoughts on Balatro?
Play them cards responsibly, even though you can't actually spend money on this game other than the initial asking price. Mm-hmm. But play this game responsibly.
I would say if you enjoyed Balatro and are looking for another game in the genre to play, Luck Be a Landlord is a good one. I think you can't beat Slay the Spire. It's really good. And I would also say if you want something more in the Slay the Spire vein, maybe Cobalt Core. Cobalt Core is really good. Braden,
I like build and deck. I like punch and deck. It's no rogue light deck builder, which is a game where you have to construct a backyard deck while a light kind of sways back and forth.
One day I will play that, but not today. All right. Well, thank you, listeners. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Till next time, peace.